Hello and welcome to Power Lines. My name is Ben Beattie. I'm an engineer and I'm sceptical of everything, particularly the direction our energy system policy has taken us in the last few years. Our guest today is Gavin Dufty, National Energy Director, Policy and Research at St Vincent de Paul, and also a board member of Energy Consumers Australia. Gavin, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Ben.
So in March 2026, you appeared on the Switched On podcast. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it's run by the wife of the Rio Economy guy. And you pushed back a little on the popular narrative. And I thought you did that quite respectfully and made some really good points. Before we talk about it a little bit more, I just wanted to share with the viewers a little clip of what that was like. And I think I've got a 5, 2, 1 countdown when it comes up. But this is interesting.
I'm interested in how you've framed that. You've framed it in terms of those who have solar access and the smart kit, free riding and cost shifting. Hang on 1 minute. But surely they have actually invested in this transition. They've spent thousands of dollars in this transition.
They have been underwritten by society for those investments. I have been subsidised, and there are charges on other people's consumption that have underwritten my investment on my home, which has improved my capital value. I am now wealthier for those investments that have been paid by the renter next door. It is a system that rolls back into the tax and transfer system as well.
Gavin, well done on pointing out some of the obvious, which so often gets overlooked. What are your, how do you talk to people about the missing, what do I call it? The mechanism, I guess, which actually subsidises all the solar.
The SRETs and there's local jurisdictions. It's kit. It's not just solar. You've also got subsidies for smart appliances. I've retrofitted my house. I'm very fortunate. I'm an old bloke. I own a home. They're being underwritten through the Victorian Energy Efficiency Upgrade. I'm down in Victoria through increase in consumption, kilowatt charges. Now, I'm not exposed to many kilowatts because I've got solar on my roof. It's only a small unit, but I'm a small terrace house. So you've got this as we go through the energy transition and the underwriting of energy resources, and they are energy assets and energy resources, being subsidised, being underwritten by others in the community. The challenge with that is it actually starts to create other societal issues. I'm a social policy person, work at St Vincent de Paul Society. We do care about equity and an orderly transition where nobody's get left behind. But what this is doing, the way a lot of the complementary measures are designed, do start to shift cost burden and create wealth transfers on particular people. Mostly young, mostly they're younger, mostly they're in the rental market. Mostly they're not older people like me who built my wealth on carbon emissions, basically. So I get to lock up my wealth, which is built on carbon emissions, and that's being underwritten by my nephews and young people. So there is an intergenerational equity issue here. There is a tax and transfer issue here, and we believe that needs to be addressed for an orderly transition where nobody's left behind. We believe we'll be able to get there quicker as a result of it. It will probably reduce the toxic politics that's around at the time on all this sort of stuff. But, we need to have this conversation because pretending it's not there is not serving anybody's interest.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm a lot more skeptical of the transition than you are, and I'm a little bit less inclined to be benevolent towards our bureaucracy. Even though I'm so skeptical of the process, and you rightly pointed out the transfer of costs. When I was stumbling at the start, I was trying to remember the word equity, and that was the word I was after. The wealth transfers that have been going on, and everyone knows it, but we don't talk about it enough. I'm optimistic we'll turn it around eventually, but in the short term, I think the system will push higher costs onto our marginal consumers. What do you think?
No, look, I agree. And there will be higher costs. Whatever we do here, forget about emissions reductions. We have to build two systems, whether it's a coal and nuclear system that we replace with, more coal and more nuclear or whatever it is and gas, or variable renewables and batteries or whatever. All the kit that was in the ground has been in there for a long time. I'm down in Victoria. Those asset lives are coming up. Your lawn, Loy Yang, A and B and all that have to be replaced. So we're going to have to replace that anyway. Same in New South Wales. Yeah, and Queensland too, not far after that. Because of that, we will be paying for two systems, which means costs will be going up. Now, the conversation around how much they go up, I think, very contested. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm just a humble social researcher that plays in energy. But I suppose from my point of view, my organisation's point of view, it's about making sure everybody pays their fair share of the increased costs, however they are, and where governments and others have a role in providing support for people and communities, that support for people and communities is there to make sure that we don't leave anybody behind. And the reason why that's really important, this is an essential service. It underpins economic growth, economic development, and people's and communities' well-being. So it is the engine room of the economy. So when you start to get it wrong, it starts to have feedback loops into the economy, and that has other unintended consequences.
Yeah, it's the unintended consequences that play out on the people who can least afford to wear them. You're a consumer advocate, and you've made lots of submissions on energy policy rule changes and all that over the years. So you've got a better handle than most on how the bureaucracy sort of fits together. I'll play a clip in a minute of the AEMC, the Australian Energy Market Commission's head, Anna Collier. She was on a podcast recently. I'm going to suggest that the energy bureaucracies are more focused on renewables targets than consumers. Let me bring up the clip of Anna, and we'll talk about what she said.
My network tariff, I mean, I live in regional New South Wales, so it's more expensive. I'm paying close to $1,000 a year just for the network. Now, I could probably get a cheaper network tariff from another provider, but they make adjustments. They'll give me even less for my solar exports and charge me even more in the evenings when I do import. This whole sort of issue about, I don't use the grid much, but I should pay a lot for it anyway, because my network bill is essentially 95% of my bill now.
That's really interesting. So if we're talking about anecdotes, we got less solar because of the type of roof we have. We got oversized batteries, and I have one of those 3 for freezers in the middle of the day.
Right.
So I take all the free power in the middle of the day on my battery, and then I can use it in the evening. And so I don't pay a lot of network tariff at all. And I do worry how my retailer is going to stay in business, because they're obviously paying a network tariff on my behalf for the stuff that I'm taking off the grid during the day. But I think I'm doing a good thing, because it means I'm using up somebody else's solar.
Gavin, I get very frustrated when I hear the experts talking a bit like that. You'll be able to express it more politely than me. What would you say to Anna, say, if you're having a coffee, and what would you talk about?
Look, what I believe Anna was saying is that the shared network, which we all use during our lifetime, it's a long-lived asset, it's 60-year asset that's out there. We all use it. It's a bit like the health system. I haven't used it much, which is really good, but I still pay a Medicare levy, and it's there. It's like schools. I'm finished at school, but I still pay through taxes and charges my school. Roads out the front, I hardly ever drive on the road. I do 1,500 kilometres a year in my car, and that's mainly on holidays, but I'm still paying full whack for the roads. So what's happened over time, and this is with one of our rule changes that we put through for two-way pricing, is that people with particular type of kit, I'm one, solar, have been managed to avoid those fixed costs in the system. Because they're fixed costs, they tend to get reallocated to other people without the luxury of solar. And that starts to build this, as we were talking about before, this wealth transfer and income cost transfer. So what Anna was talking about was the pricing for a consumer-driven future, where they're trying to reframe how network poles and wires in our street, how that is priced. So it's priced on people's actual use of it in the duration of the life of the network. So solar battery, Tim Nelson, mate of mine, he's got a big solar battery kit. He monsters the network, according to him, about 2 times a year. Back when the sun's not shining, all that sort of stuff. He monsters the network, and he believes, and I'm with him, that he needs to pay for that capacity in the network 24/7, 365 days a year.
Because he doesn't know when he's going to need it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what that conversation's about. There's a whole lot of people that will forget about that and say, well, I only want to use it when I'm exporting. Well, hang on, that's production. You're not a consumer anymore. You're a producer. Now, if it's a producer, we'd probably have fees and charges on them, license agreements, all the things that small businesses have to pay to produce the goods. So I find a lot of people with new kit sort of bounce between, I'm a consumer that relies on essential services, like we rely on hospitals and schools and all those things, to, I'm a producer and I only want it when I get a return on my production. So again, that's one of the new things in the energy market, where consumers have become, well, some consumers have become prosumers, and they think production rights are the same as consumer rights, and they're not. Production has obligations, whereas consumers have rights, and it gets a bit blurred in the consumer area, and it's very contentious. And I've no doubt had black limousines driving past my place occasionally because of the fewer things I've said. But
not in Victoria, Gavin. No way.
No, definitely in Victoria, everywhere. But and this is getting this conversation is getting even more spicy at the moment with the rollout of batteries, home batteries, because it just turbocharges all this.
I'll add some flame to the fire and ask if you've noticed the Tomago bailout as well, which was announced today, I think.
Yeah. Again, no, that's right. So there's lots of, it's lots of people plugging holes to try and get to where we need to get to, wherever that is, and I feel for the AMC, because, you've got what the national electricity objective, which is price, quality, safety, reliability, security, and emissions reductions. Now, how you actually balance all
You're going to trigger
those
me in a minute, Gavin. You're going to trigger me.
Yeah. But that's in the law, and that's in the rules, and that's what they're obliged to follow. And that's a tough gig to walk, talk, and chew gum on that, because everybody's got a different weighting about what's more important and what's not, and that changes from day to day as well. So, it's a tough place that they're in. I feel for them.
It is, and I do agree with you. I don't blame them specifically for the policy. Of course, that's the politician's job. But I would like to see them be a bit more objective and critical in their assessment of the policies, and go, well, that's great. If you want to have emissions reduction as your primary feature, that's fine. But there's a cost to that, and then how do you then spread that cost, across the economy? And I think, the Tomago one's interesting. And you talked about the prosumers, people with the batteries and the rooftop solar. I'm in that category as well, just with the solar. And they get very upset when you suggest that they should pay extra network tariff because they're now a producer into the system. And maybe there's two different, a charge for exporting instead of a feed-in tariff, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think, and not to mention the subsidies that we've all got to put the new kit on by other people. I think that's where probably the original design in the market. I'm showing my age now. The original design was based the market on an individual good concept. We all are purchasing a kilowatt, and it's an individual good, and we all have agency to purchase that individual good. Where I think what we're learning, going back to the future, what we knew in the 50s, 1950s and the 40s, is it's a social good. We're all tied up in this together. And so that conversation is starting to wash back into it, that, we are reliant on each other in one way or another in this space. And that's actually comes more to focus the more kit you put on households. And that triggers some people, because of the reason why they put it on might have been emissions reductions, and good luck to them. That's great. But all of a sudden that might not be so important when there's too much of the stuff all in the system at the one time, because the sun only shines at particular times of the day, and they're getting their stuff switched off, and all of a sudden they feel like they've been sold a dud. Well, they sort of haven't, but things have changed. So there's this. So coming back to your conversation, the AMC, I agree, is not good at narratives, not good at lifting up the trade-offs, not good at explaining how it's arrived at its particular trade-offs with its findings and its final decisions. Hopefully, and I do a lot of work with the AMC. Hopefully, they are getting better at doing that narrative. I think that they play an incredibly important role in the transition, obviously. And the more they can get that narrative right and more explaining the trade-offs and how we've got here, I believe people may not like it, but they'll more likely accept, yes, okay, we're here and I can see your reason behind it. At the moment, a lot of the outcomes are very opaque and people don't see the thought process and the trade-offs and the struggle that they go through to arrive at those decisions.
A very gentlemanly response, Gavin. Thank you very much. I would say that the transition's completely unnecessary. It has taken us down the wrong path, but we don't have to have that conversation today.
Well, yeah, and coming back to the start, I think that a transition is necessary because we had to replace stuff. It becomes about the kit that we're replacing. And, I'm technology agnostic at the moment in my organisation. I have personal views, but in my organisational view, we just need to keep the lights on. And how do we do that? And then government makes their policies. They're elected to do that. And what governments get elected on their policies, that's the rules.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think we'd all be better served if we knew what the actual costs were instead of these made up things that we get given. You mentioned going back a while in history and looking at the electricity system from a historical perspective, which is a perfect segue into my next question, which is that I believe there's a public debate, like a decent debate required on the level of privatisation of critical infrastructure. Some people look at me and go, what's a right-wing nut job like Ben Beattie doing talking about, worried about privatisation? But I think there's a trade-off to have. And if you're operating critical infrastructure for the profit of shareholders over there versus, the inefficiencies of government ownership over here, I think that debate should be had, because when we come down to it, your lawn's going to close, Araring's going to close, maybe one day, but I think your lawn has to, and you can't force a company to operate equipment forever and lose money doing it. What's to be done? Do we need to have this debate?
Yeah, yes and no. Having been around when the SEC was privatised and everything was flogged off, I was working at the Victorian Council of Social Service there. And you might think left-wing organisation, no, that's fine. We came to the conclusion then the financing, because capital is one thing. Who owns the capital? Where the capital comes from? You might get cheaper capital if your government vis-a-vis private equity. But at the end of the day, the rules are the rules. Some people will say governments are more accountable. I would argue that they can be just as unaccountable, if not more unaccountable than private equity. So it's more about, So it's more about the rules around it and the regulatory frameworks and those structures around expectations of outcomes of what equity and the associated capital that's built, what it delivers. Now, if there is delays in capital, because capital can go private equity can go wherever it wants. It can go overseas. That's probably where the role of government comes in, and we do have that here with the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. We do have deployment. Federal government's deployed money in this area as well. States are deploying money in this area. Because it can be targeted, it can be done at a lower rate. But I think it's horses for courses. The other thing that I'd also say about government deploying in this area is it does mean that governments don't deploy capital in other areas. So there are trade-offs that we have to make about that. If we stick more government money into the energy sector, does that mean we don't build more houses? And we need more houses? Or do we not build more hospitals? So
imagine if a government had spent a few years refurbishing some coal-fired power stations instead of throwing money at transmission lines and solar subsidies.
Yeah, and they are all decisions that government make. I know down in Victoria that no amount of refurbishment's going to get your lawn up and running. It's held together by glue and blue tack, basically.
I think your lawn's beyond it, right? Which is a scary thought that it's been allowed to get to that state. I mean, this is partly government going, yes, we're accelerating the transition, therefore these things have to close. But then they've spent the last decade nearly propping it up financially.
Well, that's right. Well, they propped it up to hold it together because they thought the alternatives, the other kit, was going to come, and that got delayed for a whole lot of reasons. Some within control, some without control, wars, supply chain constraints, all those things that you know. So we're in the messy middle. It was put to me. We're right in the messy middle of a transition. Could we refurbish all the coal stuff if we had, perfect hindsight? Possibly, maybe we just have the same supply chain constraints. I know with lignite down here, they just don't make the kit anymore. And all we've got in Victoria is lignite, brown coal. We don't have black coal. So we probably didn't have a choice.
Cheap as dirt, that stuff, mate.
Oh, yeah. And wet as anything. And you go down to Tassie, they probably don't have much choice at all either. So Queensland, like yourself, blessed. That state's blessed with particular other types of resources that could be deployed. So it's horses for courses, which comes to another messy bit of the energies, electricity system
State
in
accountability.
Well, it's a federated model. The states under the Constitution
should be looking after themselves, right? Rather than advocating their responsibilities to a central planning organisation like AMO in transmission lines.
Well, you can argue that too, but it needs to be a planner, and theoretically you get more efficient outcomes if we all work together. But different states have different views of the world, and I'm in Victoria, and we're not part of the NECF, so we're not part of the overall framework. I see Queensland's made some decisions recently at the Climate and Energy Council's decision about how it will or won't play. It's just messy and all that sort of stuff. But,
I think you're right. It is messy, but I think the messiness is sitting there because of the central planning arrangement. To me, the central planning says if we get an average result across the whole system, that's good for the central planners. Whereas a state-based organisation, I don't see why, like a state energy minister from Queensland, if he wants to build a new transmission line into New South Wales, why can't they negotiate together and then AMO just sits above and says make sure they're complying with the rules? I don't know why a Sydney or Canberra-based organisation has to decree infrastructure in various states.
Well, they could do what you said. They haven't. And as a result of it, the ISP comes out and says these are actionable projects. I'll note, and no doubt you've had a look at the latest ISP. I mean, they're doubling the clutch and finding reverse on a lot of the things because, what was actionable is not actionable. And I suppose that's another outcome of what we thought was steady state. And we had built this stuff for many, many years when we started to build it, and the world went to where the world's gone to. And we didn't know all about consumer energy resources and lots of small kit. All of a sudden, things have pivoted and we're changing. So it is messy. I don't know the answer, and here we are. I mean, and we can't go back in time. And anyway, I look, I'm an optimist, as you've probably worked out. We'll get there. I reckon by 2033 we'll be that far on the other side, whatever the other side looks like, that it'll be clearer. But what happens in the meantime, the turmoil it creates, or none at all.
Make a note, 2033. Gavin said it's all good.
No. Well, I said we'll be on the other side. A lot of these debates will probably be gone, and we'll have different debates. But a lot of the stuff is transition. By then, theoretically, your lawn's gone. A couple of plants are gone in New South Wales. Should have some interconnectors up and rolling. Every house will probably have a solar battery on it anyway. Large-scale industry that was going to be destroyed because of high gas prices and all that, they'll probably be gone unless they've got subsidies. It is messy.
There is some issues out there, right? Hey, I wanted to ask you about your tariff tracker. So in my pre-prepared questions, I wrote it like this: the Gavin Dufty tariff tracker is one of the better publications I've seen because it explains the bill stack. Now, the bill stack, I think it's really good because when I'm an electrical engineer. You can see I'm actually in a motel room at the moment in my high vis. Don't tell my boss, but I'm out on site at the moment doing energy projects. Now, in my experience, I was pretty much across the physical side of it. You know, I'm educated, trained, and experienced in that area for several years. But the market and the sort of the retail side of it can be quite mysterious. So it's when I first started looking into it myself, I realized that each of the supply chain components, the bill stack, they're all priced and charged, cost recovered in different manners, different mechanisms. You got the wholesale thing, you got contract, and this is just talking about the generation of electricity is multiple things going on, and then you've got a more fixed and regulated networks as your transmission and your distribution, and then you have a whole retail side as well, which then has to try and fight through the arrangement and get a price out to customers. And now we've got the regulators default market offer in there as well, a pseudo kind of price cap target arrangement, which is a bit weird. And you've got your tariff tracker, which actually helps makes it make a bit of sense to people, as well as got gas in it too. So I wanted to, before we go a bit more into the tariff tracker, I have a clip to play with you and Anne Delaney a little bit. And here, you and Anne are discussing network charges.
So I'm part of a household that has the smart kit, and just recently, we're able to get a cheaper home battery attached, and we got some more solar attached.
Yeah.
We're not drawing from the grid anymore.
Okay, so you can disconnect then and not pay grid charges.
Potentially, but as
Yeah.
we know, we want people to stay
Cheeky.
on the grid.
Well, as long as they pay their costs, yeah.
But I am paying costs, Gavin, on
No,
my network charges. We're
no,
paying
you are-
$1,000 a year for those network charges. I mean, are you
you are.
suggesting that we need to pay more?
I'm suggesting that you need to pay the costs that you incur when you're using the network. Now, if you put new kit on your home, you might get a reduction because you don't actually use it as much as you did. But it's not
Okay,
about
sorry.
you.
Let's just clarify that. So what you're suggesting is that if I'm not using the grid very much, that my network charges will go down.
So Anne's kind of missing the point there, isn't she? You were trying to explain that if you're going to be an exporter or this massive consumer, sometimes you don't just pay for your consumption and the network that you're using at the time. You need to basically reserve a portion of that network for your use whenever you like, and that's the actual charge.
And that could change depending on how much you monster the network within a yearly period, for example. So if all of a sudden, and I don't know how big their kit is, 30 kilowatt battery. If they all of a sudden want 30 kilowatts draw because they've got heated pools and whatever they've got, slab heating, well, they're going to have to pay the capacity in the network to provide that 30 kilowatts on demand when they want it, So, but if they were to use their battery and say, well, look, okay, our footprint at the maximum every year, it might only be 1 kilowatt. That's fine. They should pay less capacity for the network because they're using less. But it's not a volume deal. It's the size of the pipe deal in my head. The other thing is it's the solar battery setup combo there. They're actually potentially paying for access to wholesale markets. And as a result of that, they should pay for access to those markets because they're beneficiaries from the return that they get paid for through the wholesale market, return back through. It won't be feed-in tariffs, it'll be at some other tariff, and that's the whole VPP. And good luck to them. That's great because that's good for me because it keeps wholesale prices down. But it's not a free ride to bring your goods to market. It's like if you're making tomatoes or apples, you still got to put them in the car and you pay for the petrol in the car to get them to the market. So I think
absolutely agree, right? So what basically to paraphrase is if you wanted to do that, by all means go and do it, and there's market benefits that you can receive and reap the rewards of, but there's costs you'll be exposed to as well. But it's all being hidden and masked by the subsidies which someone's paying somewhere.
Well, that's right. And, and there's some foundational issues. We all don't have smart meters at the moment, so we can't allocate the costs effectively. There's people that have managed to jump in and get a particular benefit through subsidies and lower costs, which is great for them. But those subsidies and privileges been baked in, and now they want to defend it. I get it. As humans, we like to keep our privilege, so I can understand it. But there needs to be a bigger conversation here about the social good, and over time, the more people that do that, and they're not paying their way, there'll be fewer and fewer and fewer other people that will be paying astronomical prices. As a society, that is not a place I don't believe people want to live in. So there is this messy middle, and there's got to be some reordering. And there is, as you said before, there needs to be an adult conversation, whether that be through the AEMC, governments and all that, about, well, this means that there will be cost reallocations, value reallocations, but if we can get those foundations right, we might get through the messy middle a little bit easier. And my 2033 dream of will be on the other side, it might be right.
I do like your optimism. Gavin, I have your tariff tracker report up on the screen. Can you see that?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Excellent. So I wanted to just go through one of the table of contents is great, an overview, what's it about, the bill stack, solar offers, and this is, I think more people should be aware of this, which is why I'm really happy to bring this up.
Thanks, Ben.
One of the things is you get the excellent charts. So here's a chart of electricity retail prices, and this is including GST. So when I've actually done a little exercise like this myself, and when you go through the various regular submissions and the regulators' assessment, and they come up with their final assessments of the default market offers and that kind of thing, it's very interesting when you start going, well, this part does not have GST and this part does, and this state treats it slightly differently because Victoria is not part of the DMO process.
No, it's got its own video, but and you'll notice with us, we actually, when we put this together 15 years ago, we asked around the industry and said, look, what's average consumption? And that was before solar and everything. So we've held our consumption levels at about, I think that's on average, that's about 6,000 kilowatts per year across the NEM. Whereas the regulators are down about 4, and that's because the average has been dragged down by solar. We're tracking tariffs, prices. So that's why we've held it at 6,000, and that's why our charts are like that. And others, what they do is they adjust the consumption relative to the price. So you start to get this, a different price path, but we hold consumption solid.
Excellent. Well, I'm gonna skip over that and go to the bill stack. So here's where we've got the network use of system charges, and we're talking, and this is what I think the big effect of the integrated system plan is going to be. So if all those transmission projects are realised, I don't think they all will, but did you guys talk about the impact of, say, Energy Connect and HumeLink?
I do sit on a number of customer councils, and that I know the wall of costs that's coming from those. You'll start to see the first lot through the AusNet draft determination in Victoria. You've got Transgrids up for their next RP4 coming. So there is a wall of transmission capital coming.
Will it show up in this chart here?
Yeah. Anything on the new OS, it will show up. We'll track that. And we've just been, thanks to ECO, we've just been refunded again for another 3 years to track this stuff. So yeah, we will start, and the New South Wales roadmaps will wash through there. So we'll start to see that. And then when you get down to the cost stack, then we've got to work out where that washes through. At the moment, a lot of those costs are on consumption. And as I said before, I don't have much consumption. So these increased in fixed costs coming because of all the capex that's going down won't be coming to me unless there's change to the pricing structures. And I need to pay
because you're a solar user, right? If you're insulated from the prices.
Yeah, on historical pricing products, which is about a fixed charge when the volumetric is higher, and that's where you probably do need to shift more costs through to fixed. I mean, personally, I'm doing myself. I'll pay a little bit more, but again, if we can get better utilisation, more EVs into the system, more data centres, and all that hopefully lowers the cost for everybody or helps hoover up or pay for the additional costs. So, there's a lot of moving parts going on in this space.
Note, I think this is your December 2025 report, and no doubt
Yeah.
In the process of getting your next one out, are you expecting to see, say, some of these overall retail prices come down a little bit for the 2026 year? Because we have had
Okay.
some reductions.
A sneak high-level narrative with the changes to the DMO. So the DMO for the NEM regions, so South East Queensland, New South Wales and South Australia, the new pricing of the DMO, which is a fair price rather than the price ceiling, has probably seen a little bit of compression in the market. So less difference between best and worst, which some will say is good, some will say is bad. There's probably a reduction in loss leaders out there. Super deals, like if people are after those that were shopping around getting super deals, probably not there. Evaporation of feed-in tariffs.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Not there. It's not worth much anymore. Unless you can sort of get in there after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, particular things. Starting to see the other thing, just in a feel for the data as we're going through it, I think the amount of change that's being put on the industry all at the same time, lots of rule changes, lots of pricing changes, lots of network changes. I think the whole industry's got speed wobbles. So it hasn't got the capacity and the bandwidth to innovate or think strategically. It's just responding to change.
Some of the submissions to the draft DMO, the most recent one by the retailers, were interesting, where they were a bit concerned about some of the paths taken to show a lower cost. It's increasing the risk for retailers.
Yeah. And, there are conversations that there's too many retailers, let's get rid of a few. But then you do that, how does that work with, back books and cascades? And, UK went through all of that. So again, messy middle. And then you've got the step outs, like you've got all these new. Amber's a really good example. Do you really need a retail license to play in this space anymore? I'll offer you membership fee and I'll give you access to the wholesale market. Off you go.
They do. They guarantee you won't be worse off than the default market offer. I think that's the risk mitigation for the very high prices.
Yeah. But, again, you could, with the Internet of Everything coming, smart appliances and Google Home, I don't know whether people have played around with that app, but I have a look at the new AI, new apps. I mean, you could see a whole lot of disruptors coming, a bit like Uber came in and disrupted the taxi industry.
For those who can afford to opt in, yep.
Yeah, on new appliances as you're built in, and you just say, well, okay, I'll let you, my AI and the Google app, switch on and off appliances. My aircon can do it now. My space that sets my space heating, hot water's a little bit different, but literally I could shift a lot of appliances, and they do offer a bit of flex.
Well, that's interesting, right? So the flex part is kind of adjacent to demand management. Yep. And demand management could be, nowadays, we need people to use more in the middle of the day because we've got network problems because of the influx of the inverter-based stuff. Yeah. And it could be, we're running with the wind's dropped, or it's cloudy. We don't have enough generation. It's getting tight. So please use less.
And that could, theoretically, with smart appliances, with a lead time, it takes a while to get there, and AI and all that. You could see Google, for example, building an energy portfolio book based on home services. So it's not selling kilowatts anymore. It's just, I'll keep your pool clean. I'll do this. I'll do that. Could be really good for small businesses in High Street that open up at 8 o'clock in the morning and shut at 5. Free energy, everybody. Make as many ice creams as you like.
It's an interesting concept. I think there are some people who will be able to make, and businesses will be able to make good use of that, the opportunity, I think. But I think if you're just your basic dual income parents, two working parents with school aged kids, you're locked into a 9 to 5 cycle, right? So you're not going to be cooking at 2 in the afternoon. You're going to be cooking at 7.
Yeah, no, and that's right. And that's why we need to get the pricing structures right. So those that need to pay more because they are putting more costs in the system, I'm injecting in the middle of the day when we don't need it, causing voltage issues and a whole lot of stuff, using the network in a different way than the old-fashioned pricing structures could manage. And, I need to have a solid platform. Now, that transition cost will be on me, and that's okay. But once I've got that solid foundation, I can then build a home energy management system around it if I want to. and benefit myself, but also everybody else. And that's where on the last one, are we at a tipping point? And our theory is once you start to get about 80% smart meter penetration across the NEM, that the visibility of all the costs and the value, of private equity, I can trust them to be greedy, which is a great thing. Once they see that, then they'll start to build products. They'll know to invest to build products and services about how to extract value because they can see everybody's profile on a 5-minute basis. Until we get to that volume, that penetration, I don't believe you'll see retailers putting money in their pocket unless they're a niche job like Amber that is niching to a particular type of technology rather than a home management.
Okay, I think it's going to take a lot longer than many people expect, and it's going to be very interesting. On another topic that I wanted to flick at you was, and we talked about it separately before the podcast a couple of weeks ago, domestic gas supplies. And we've got, let me see if I can bring up the webpage, and I think it's Solstice Energy.
Yep.
And they are sharing this website, and can you see that?
Yep.
Helping you switch to cheaper energy. What they actually mean is helping themselves without
get out of the gas industry. Get out of the gas industry in Victoria.
So what sort of impact is this a result of privatization gone bad, or is it everything just working as you kind of expect it to?
No. The backstory of this is really interesting. So the gas industry in Victoria was always privatised. Well, basically always privatised. Then it was deregulated. You had a whole lot of town gas. For those that don't know, that basically, the gasometers that used to be around the place were servicing town gas inserts that weren't. They had ZPG, not natural gas. They have a different gas in them. So there was these country inserts. So what happened is the Labor Party back in the Brumby-Bracks days decided to extend the LPG network, the natural gas network.
Yep.
Natural gas network out to the LPG town gases and connect them. So they extended it. Labor government extended it. And then when the Libs came in under, what was it, Ballyhoo, I think it is, there was these couple towns left. Omeo, like little regional remote communities. And what they did for them is they said, Solstice came in and said, rightio, what we'll do is we will freight in natural gas, inject it through pumping into these old LPG town gas networks. So that's what they did, signed up a contract that was meant to run to 2030. What's happened is because of everything in the gas industry and transport and that, they can't do it. It's just too expensive to do that. So what's happened is the government's allowed them to exit that contract and that obligation out to 2030, and this is what they're doing. So
is this different to accelerated depreciation?
Yeah, this is just walk away. We all take a haircut. Households are taking a haircut. Businesses are taking a haircut. On the way out, they're offering, can you electrify? Some places can. Some places can't because they're on swirl lines, so the heavy electrification can't happen. Other ones are rejetting to LPG jets on the stuff. So
within house storage tanks and
stuff. And there's been some really clunky outcomes in here as well. Some small businesses, a lot of these towns are touristy type towns, so go off in the middle of winter. All the skiers go up there and stuff.
Demand goes up. Yep.
Yeah, so they refitted, restaurants, for example, that, just spent $30,000 refitting a kitchen in a restaurant, and all of a sudden, based on natural pump, gas being there, and it's not there anymore. So there's these, how do you find reverse and what does it look like, teething issues going on. So it's a really interesting case study about how you actually get off a network in decline. So great learnings for reticulated natural gas.
Because there is an accelerated depreciation scheme occurring in Victoria, isn't there?
Yeah. So in the gas reg resets, most of the gas companies are looking for accelerated depreciation because of net zero 2050. We need to be off the gas network, so they're looking for that. With that, there's also been changes to the form of control. They were on price caps. And we're getting really technical now. So now they're doing a blend between revenue cap and price cap. Price caps, companies where the risk, volume risk, revenue caps, they sort of get their money, and consumers where the demand risk. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in the gas space. Really tough for Victoria. You've got about 75% of households are on reticulated gas, and mainly that's for
What if
heating.
the new premier does a bit of a backflip with his new energy minister and all the rest of it, and says, "Oh, actually, we'll put this off for a few years."
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know whether households can go as fast as the targets. Well, I don't think households can go as fast as the targets are expecting them. For me to get off gas, I've got one single gas instantaneous in an oven. I'm going to have to rewire my home if I want to put an induction in, and then
So yeah, I could tell a story about that. So when we renovated our place, it must have been maybe 12, 15 years ago, gas stove. My wife's she's got an Italian background. She loves her cooking, and the gas stove. The gas there's no option that we're not doing an electric stovetop.
Yeah.
We're just not. And a lot of people would do that, but we don't have gas in the street, so we just have LPG bottles.
Yeah,
and it's fine. It costs us $90 a year.
And that's what people will do, so they'll say, if I want that form of, I want flame for cooking or whatever, they'll do that. Going back, accelerated depreciation, then you've got remediation. Like, there's a lot of kit in the ground that's hidden that nobody sees. And I was on the Evo reg reset, and they were talking about, well, we're going to have to pour concrete down all this sort of stuff, because otherwise you'll start to get craters in the road as it all sort of disappears and falls apart. So look,
cheaper to
there's
fix the road.
lot of challenges. Yeah.
But they're really good at fixing roads in Victoria, aren't they, Gavin?
Yeah, we do have a few potholes at the moment. I saw that on the news the other night. Fortunately, I only do about 1,500 k's a year in my car, so I don't get to wreck it on the roads.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So one of my last questions, I think, is about related to your tariff tracker and the general ability of your normie, your layperson out there to make sense of the electricity system. Do you think Australians are becoming more educated on the energy system as the prices go up and the conversation gets more heated and more top of headlines? Or do you think a lot of people are just not really paying attention?
I'm going to answer that question in a really weird way. And this is, reflecting on the 50,000 members of the Vinnies, they are all experts in their energy use. And they know what their bill is, and they know what they need, and they know what they can afford, and they know what they want. That's all they need to know. And other people I know a lot about it, but I'm not average. And some of my members will know a lot about it too. So I think my word of advice to the energy industry, if they're listening to this, is don't expect they are experts in what their energy needs are. They shouldn't have to be experts in anything else. If they're experts in their energy needs, listen to what they want and give it to them, because that will give you a best outcome. And I hear the industry saying, we just need to educate them more. And as soon as I hear somebody say they need more education, I sort of think, well, hang on, you're not doing your job. Because if you're saying the problem is they're not smart enough, you go, hang on a tick, why are you designing a product that's not working or is not valuable to them? And I think that's, again, where the opportunity is in the energy transition. If we can get some people to start to design things, and this is where private equity comes in, start to design things that are meaningful for people, rather than trying to shoehorn people into stuff that they shouldn't have to understand, if that makes sense.
I think you're pretty right. I also think that if it was working well, no one would have heard of AEMO or the AEMC or anything else. Like, it'd be dead easy. I was wondering, I had another question, but I think I forgot. Yep, it's slipped out of my head.
It doesn't matter. We want energy to be boring, and for those that want it to be absolutely fantastic, they can have that too. But we all shouldn't have to be obsessed about energy. And it is, that's the thing. It's just become such a big conversation.
Yeah, it is one of those things. It hasn't gone away. It's sort of stayed in there all through. The 2019 was okay. 2020 got interesting because of the COVID lockdowns, and then the commodity prices went down, so electricity was very, very cheap for a while. And then we got 2021. And 2021, I'd like to talk to you separately about it. But in 2021, in October, we got 5-minute settlement in the wholesale market. And the volatility went up, which was the opposite of what the AMC said at the time. And then we got 2022, of course. And then 2023 was actually a down cycle. And then 2024 was an up cycle again. 2025 was down. 2026 seems to be down slightly. And I think the grid batteries, it's looking more and more likely that they have something to do with that, or the ones that are in there.
And everybody's cannibalizing everybody. So, equity that thought it was going to get a return, it hasn't.
This is the problem, right?
Yeah. And then data centers, if they come in spades as they claim to be coming in spades, all of a sudden you might find that all of a sudden we've got constraints all over the place again, and shortfalls and all this sort of stuff, or not. So energy's not a dull place to work in, Ben. I love it. There's always something new around the corner.
Mate, I'd love to talk to you some more, but thanks for coming on the podcast, Gavin. You've been great.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Ben.